Thank you very much for staying with us here on the Journalist Channel and joining us on PM Express. Tonight, we are going to be examining something that has been snowballing into a major controversy over the last few days. It's become one of those very highly topical issues, and it got to a head today when civil society groups numbering several of them, the leading ones in this country, with a membership of more than 500 retailers, did a press conference and made a call on the president. We're going to look into that. It has to do with the Auditor General versus the presidency in the case of his accumulated leave controversy. So these 500 members of the civil society organizations have launched a campaign. They are urging the president to recall the Auditor General, Domelevo. Remember that he has been asked to proceed on his accumulated leave. He has started a leave, but the civil society groups have a concern with that. They say that they will seek redress eventually at the Supreme Court if the president does not rescind his decision on the matter. Now, they include a number of the leading ones in Ghana, the CDDs, the IDEX of this world, and it was addressed by a host of them jointly today, making the call. Now, also today, on the back of the press conference, raising several concerns, describes the president's action as regrettable and unconstitutional. In the wake of the decision to ask him to proceed on leave, says his action amounts to interference in the affairs of the independent institutions and sets a bad precedent as well, something that they believe should not be allowed to stand. Already, the presidency has referred to a precedent, and that the Mills administration has a basis for this. The CSOs also say that it doesn't send the right signal to the governance community within and outside the country. In fact, they make the point that it shows that the president's commitment and fight against corruption is weak, and that is a pretty damning verdict on the president's, I guess, record when it comes to fighting corruption, seeing that he had campaigned and come into office on the back of a strong anti-corruption agenda. Now, the group say President Akufo-Addo could be his chances as well, and going into the election, they question who is advising the president, but also raises the concern about where we are currently with 5 months of the election. Why would such a major decision be taken? Some lawyers, we know there have been many legal opinions expressed on this matter, raised legal concerns about the president's action. The CSOs do same as well, and the background to this is well documented. The Auditor General has replied himself. He had not gone down without a fight, but it appeared this particular response that he put in only did one thing: increases accumulated leave days, as we saw in the subsequent reply from the presidency, also in reaction to Domelevo's own position to fight back. So tonight we will look at why the civil society organizations have taken this stance. They've launched this hashtag Bring Back Domelevo campaign, which is sitting on social media, but they've also served notice that eventually they will have to apply to the Supreme Court. And it begs the question, if they believe that is the ultimate way to solve this problem, why are they taking the route of a campaign when they could simply head to the Supreme Court to bring finality to this matter? We'll ask the civil society groups and also hear from government. Stay with us here on PM Express. Thank you very much for staying with us. My guest joining me tonight is Dr. Kojo Asante. He is the Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement at the CDD. He, together with others, read the statement of the civil society organizations today at the press conference. I'm delighted that he could join us. Austin Game is a Labour expert, and I'm grateful that he could also join us with his thoughts. James Cloutier-Veggie is the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. And remember that as far as the constitutional architecture is concerned, the Public Accounts Committee is the committee that works directly with the Auditor General in terms of his work when it comes to the reports that he puts out. And so that is a very important body to go to. When you're dealing with the Auditor General, I wonder, we've had him speak on this before, but is there anything that could be done to reverse what has happened? Can Parliament take a stance on this matter through the park? We'll try and get his thoughts. But I want to start tonight and get the perspective of government on the back of what has happened today by the civil society organizations. And so I'm delighted to bring in Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, who is the Information Minister, who joins us on the telephone tonight. Mr. Oppong-Nkrumah, thank you very much for your time here on PM Express. So the civil society groups have started this campaign, hashtag Bring Back Domelevo. What's government's reaction to that?
I want to start by putting a caveat out. I'm traveling from the constituency back to Accra, so the network does get bad or you have difficulties in hearing me. My sincere apologies to you. I think first I would speak to government's understanding of what has happened, and then I would share with you government's view of it. Our understanding is that a number of persons who work in a number of civil society organizations have issued a statement and have held a press conference that does about three things. One, expresses their opinion of what the labor law says, reference to leave and how this provision of the labor law has been applied in the case of the respected Auditor General. And this view or this opinion that they express is to say that they think that how the executive branch of government has acted on this matter is not constitutional or is unconstitutional. Again, it is our understanding that to galvanize or to ventilate this view, they intend to go to court to ask the court to pronounce on this opinion or this view of theirs, that it is unconstitutional. As a third matter, our understanding is that at the same time they are saying that for them this will amount to a slap in the face of the anti-corruption fight. And then finally, they are also saying that they are starting a campaign on the sidelines while proceeding to court. They are starting a campaign which they've put a hashtag around. This is our understanding of what has happened today. Our view is that it cannot be bad for our democracy if civil society groups decide to speak up about something that they opine is untoward. We all recall that this is not the first time that this particular labor law provision has been applied. And the precedents are quite clear on the position of the law. But this is the first time that we're having civil society groups decide to oppose it, decide to articulate that opposition, decide to announce that they are going to court, and decide to start a campaign on the sidelines. And we think that this is further testimony to the fact that our democracy as a country is even moving forward. We are of the view that this position that the civil society groups have taken to the effect that the action of the executive branch of government is unconstitutional is incorrect. And we do not share, respectfully, that opinion that they have. Again, we have the view that if they argue that they want to proceed to the court for the court to hear them and possibly agree with them or disagree with them, that is something that is the appropriate thing to do for anybody who thinks that something unconstitutional has been done. But we do not share the view that it is proper that while you are going to court or while you are in court, you start a campaign on the sideline, which is aimed at what? Achieving the objective of pressurizing the court to agree with you, or what exactly? We think that if it is a constitutional matter and you believe that your opinion of the law is right, and you believe that going to court is the right thing to do, you cannot mix that with a campaign on the sidelines. But be that as it may, we think that this is further testimony to the fact that our democracy as a country is moving forward. People can disagree with the acts of government and have legal remedies to attempt to ventilate those disagreements. Briefly, that will be our reaction.
Stay with me, Mr. Ponkrama. Let me bring in your good friend, your namesake, Kojo, as well. By this time, Kojo Asante with the CDD. He read the main statement today. Mr. Asante, I want your reaction to those initial comments by the chief government spokesperson, information minister. He makes a fundamental point that if your ultimate goal, as you've indicated, is at some point apply to the Supreme Court, which you again acknowledge is the ultimate settler of this particular dispute, why the need for another campaign, which only has at best moral suasion? What's your reaction to that?
Good evening, and good evening to Kojo. Good evening to fellow panelists. I don't know where to start, but you know, it is unfortunate that we often reduce everything to a legal resolution. And that is why in our press statement, we were very clear on the various remedies that we think are available. And I think the first one we alluded to was that we think that the president has not considered all of the legal reasoning that is available, that clearly, in our view, clearly shows that the decision that was taken was in error and not grounded in law. And let me repeat it. First of all, there is nothing in the labor law that talks about accumulated leave. And there's clear authority on this. Yes, the labor law talks about leave that cannot be forfeited and agreed on. Any attempt to agree on leave to forfeit it is considered void, so mandatory leave. But it does not talk about accumulated leave. And the public services have clear guidelines on this in the public service HR manual. So even if government was minded to follow the law, it can go and look at its own guidelines. The public services has the constitutional authority and mandate to provide these kinds of guidelines to public servants. But we have always said that the Auditor General does not even fall into those guidelines. The conditions of the Auditor General, conditions and benefits of the Auditor General is actually guided by Article 70 and 71. That is, and all constitutional bodies, the President, Speaker of Parliament, all of those people, their conditions are set by Article 71. So, you know, when people start throwing around, you know, these kinds of conditions of service, that pertains to other employees in the audit service. I don't know where they are getting it from. So our point is that those issues were not considered, because in the letter that the second letter in particular that sought to elaborate on the legal basis of the president, it did not it did not address address it to all of these other issues that we have brought up. So for us, if accumulated leave does not exist, why should you ask somebody to go on leave for 167 days?
Well, government.
So that's our first point.
Government says that they disagree with that. The decision has been taken, that this is only your opinion, and that yes.
So I just want to make the distinction that yes, government disagree with our opinion, but what I'm saying is that we have brought other issues onto the table, which is from the position that have been put out. The first letter, the second letter, in explaining government's decision, did not address these matters. All right. So I think that is important to put on the table. But we have said that the reason why we have even taken this very important step is because it's not just about Mr. Domelevo today. The actions of the president raise some very serious constitutional issues about the confines of the powers of the president in relation to constitutional bodies. Because if this power, the president interprets his power to include these administrative supervisory actions, including disciplinary actions, then it means that the president can decide one day that the Chief Justice should do this or do that, or suspend the Chief Justice for insubordination, all of that. And we have seen that across Africa, that these things are a problem. So that is why we have indicated that at some point, we would have to go to the Supreme Court to get a broader interpretation on the president's power in relation to others.
I mean, those
issues are mutually exclusive.
Kojo Ponkrumah's point is, why not now? Because that is the only way to settle this conclusively.
Well, you see, and I don't know what, because I have made the point purposely that those issues are mutually exclusive. You can't say that no, we should go to court. We are trying to, on the first level, appeal to the president that please look at the law again. You may have looked at it and interpreted it in error, but look at the law again and reconsider. But there's also a bigger issue that we have to address. So I don't think you have to choose one or the other.
Okay.
There's no binary position in our view. So that's why for us, the campaign is important, because we consider Mr. Domelevo as a very important anti-corruption campaigner. And even if he's going to give us 2 months and he retires, we want him to be working, not to be sitting at home. And actually, it will help the president in his anti-corruption campaign. So the purpose of the hashtag Bring Back Domelevo campaign is simply to, put pressure on the president to change his mind? How would you put it? No, to remind the president that there are many Ghanaians who share this position, and he should listen to those Ghanaians.
Okay. Let me bring in Kojo quickly, and I'll go to Austin Game and hear from Mr. Abedje. So, Mr. Ponkrumah, so the point is, he just made that, and they made a point that the president is a listening one. If indeed this gathers momentum, and many members of the public agree that this is a bad decision, the president is enjoined, I guess, as a listening president, to take a second look at this. Is this not something that the president or government will entertain?
So about 3 quick points. And let me say good evening to Kojo, because I didn't know he was on the line in the beginning, so I didn't say good evening to him. I think you cannot mix, and this is my personal view, this is not government, but this is my personal view. You cannot mix a claim for a constitutional argument with some other matters like what Kojo is talking about, that we like Mr. Domelevo, and even if he has about 2 months to go on retirement, we want him to be working. That may be your preference, but if you seek to make a constitutional argument, that constitutional argument must satisfy the pillars of the Constitution that you are invoking, and must be made before the body that is seized with the proper powers to make a determination. Because in the absence of that, then anybody can raise any part of the Constitution and say, in my opinion, X, Y, Z, and therefore I'm starting a campaign on it. And we will never get to a conclusion of any of these matters. I respect the position that my colleagues in civil society have taken. But they must also understand that if they are starting off by saying that the actions of the executive branch of government are unconstitutional, then like they as governance people will always speak about, the constitutionally outlined avenues for addressing constitutional matters are the ones that we should all encourage resolution. Else we will go on and on and on and on and not get to a conclusion. That's number one. Number two, I don't think this action is about President Akufo-Addo per se. And that is why I've been choosing my words carefully by talking about the executive branch of government, the executive arm of government. And that is why I have invoked the precedent that the executive has a particular view of this provision and how it ought to be applied. And that is why you would have found that it has been applied, for example, in the Mills era, if I'm correct, and it has been applied in the Akufo-Addo administration, because this is the view of the executive arm of government. Now, again, if somebody thinks that that view, that interpretation that the executive arm of government is giving to the law is incorrect, I pray my colleagues that there are proper avenues for dealing with it. And they themselves have indicated that at some point they may want to look at that. And like you rightly asked, perhaps that point is now, so that we get to the resolution of this matter very quickly. Now, let me give you another example. I think it's both the executive and the legislature that have a certain view of a provision in the Constitution of when the president is not in the Republic and the vice president is not in the Republic. And the view that they have come to is that the Speaker of Parliament must be sworn in. There are many people who disagree with that view, that if the president is out of the jurisdiction functioning as president, the vice president is probably out of the jurisdiction functioning as vice president. We do not have any business, no matter the kind of interpretation that you give to it, to swear in somebody else as an acting president. But regardless of the number of people who hold that view, you have realized that any time it has gone before the Supreme Court, at least about twice, the Supreme Court has ruled that those opinions are not backed by the letter and the spirit of the Constitution. So this is not a matter that, in my view, respectfully, we are going to say we like Mr. Domelevo, and if he has 2 more months to act before his retirement, we want to see him working because we consider him a strong anti-corruption. No, I think that if what you have invoked is a constitutional matter, let's do all ourselves a favor and put it to rest once and for all. If the interpretation that the executive branch of government has been given to it over the years is wrong, it will be corrected. Yeah. If your opinion is wrong, that will be corrected as well.
Mr. Ponkman, hold the line for me. Let me bring in Austin Game and also the Deputy Minority Leader. I'll come to you, Kojo Asante, very shortly on this matter as well. Mr. Game, so this is where we are. Civil society have started a campaign. Eventually, they say they'll have to get this properly dealt with at the Supreme Court. Government says, well, we all need that to advance our democracy, to resolve this quite conclusively. Where do you stand on this?
Thank you. I really have no personal stand. I know the role that myself and about 10 others who were put together to put this law together, the role we played. And even the president that is being mentioned today did play a major role, and that's personal, so I'm not going to talk about it for now. But what I want to say clearly is this. This is a labor relations matter. And the primary place to go, if there is anywhere to go, that is why we did not, put this labor law into jargons like where to for, there to for, and the Latin language jargons. This is a simple social legislation to be applied. And it's an HR function. And like my friend Kojo Asante rightly said, I think that it's important that we bear in mind that we offered an advice earlier. Look, let the gentleman take his 2020 leave and return to work, because Section 31 that has been vigorously canvassed for has nothing to do with accumulated leave. It has all to do with annual leave. Now, at the beginning, towards the end of, let's say, November each year, any good functioning HR management team would put together a simple roster called leave roster, and to be affirmed, because everybody would have made a choice. But because of the flexibility in the labor law, because also due to the exigencies of work and the emergencies that may crop up, we've left some flexibility there so that people could take their leave and carry it over into the other year. That's why in the HR manual of the Public Services Commission, there is an element of 1 year into the other year only, not over 100 and something. This is not proper. 2, if you observe the reply given by my very good friend, Nana Bedioto Asante, clearly he referenced a certain ruling by the Honorable, Appeals Court judge or so. Clearly what it is that if there is anything that is in the manual or in the appointment letter or condition of service that inures to the benefit of the worker, you do not vary it ultra vires. You do not do that. Section 19 confirms that, of the Labor Act says that if there is something expressly written into the condition of service, you don't vary it to the disadvantage of the person. It's confirmed by Section 1054 of the same Labor Act that when something is written into a condition of service, or even the appointment letter, which can always be tendered in evidence, you don't vary it to the disadvantage of the person. That's what clearly the labor law is about. So if you ask my view, simple put, professionally, you are not supposed to accumulate leave more than a year. If the worst comes worst, you take your leave by 31st December, it carries you over into the other year, and if there need be for you to continue, you carry it over again. But you don't take over something 100 days like that. I think they should take a second look at it.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Avedji. Mr. Avedji, so you are the chair of the Public Accounts Committee. The same constitution gives your committee the powers to work very closely with the Auditor General. You receive his reports, you scrutinize. I wonder what your Parliament is in session. What is it that your committee is doing about this back and forth, if any?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kojo. Evans, then good evening to my colleagues, panelists. Evans, first of all, the Auditor General's work is incomplete until it's dealt with in Parliament, and that is the work of my committee. Now, the issue about the legality, whether the President has the mandate, the power to ask the Auditor General to go on leave or not, I will not delve into that because we have competent people here to address that. But I want to look at it from the fight against corruption point of view. The Auditor General has been an establishment of the Constitution, and there's a reason why the Office of the Auditor General and the Auditor General himself is an establishment of the Constitution to guarantee his independence, so that he can have the free will and work so that we can fight corruption. Now, I'm taking it from this point that when the Auditor General finishes his work and is submitted to Parliament, Parliament then look into the work of the Auditor General and then make recommendations which the Auditor General carried back to ensure that those recommendations are followed and implemented. So the Auditor General, we can't say conveniently that is an officer of Parliament. Now, the Constitution did not talk about who appoints the Auditor General, but the Audit Service Act of 2000 at 584 says that he should be appointed by the president. And some of us have an issue with that. And I've been saying it all the time that if the Auditor General is an officer of Parliament, his appointment must be done by Parliament. But we don't allow the president to appoint the Auditor General, and where his report must be submitted to Parliament and for Parliament to work with. But if you are fighting corruption, and you have an officer who is also there to fight the corruption, and this officer did not take his leave, isn't a good news for you, the employer, that this officer who is helping me to fight corruption has forfeited his leave, and for that matter, stay at post and help me fight the corruption? If you're asking this officer to proceed on leave, and then you ask another officer to act instead, and then within 2-3 days, this person who is acting have written a letter to clear a corrupt or an issue which is before court, can one say that the action of the president to ask the Auditor General to proceed on leave is purposely done in order to clear the senior minister? These are genuine questions that we should ask. And if we do that, are we actually committed to the fighting of corruption? This is an issue that we should all talk about, because within 2 days, the acting Auditor General has been able to clear the documents that the senior minister submitted. My question here, as the Public Accounts Committee chairman, is that at the time of the audits, where it was found that no work has been done, where were those documents which have not been cleared by the acting Auditor General? Where were those documents and which were not submitted at the time of the audit for observation? Why are those documents now available? Why from those documents now? And why should the Auditor General, who has been asked to go on leave, the succeeding acting Auditor General, clear this and satisfy himself with this document within 2-3 days? These are genuine questions that one who is tempted to say that it is because the Mr. Domelevo has been a standing block insisting that the correct thing is done in fight against corruption. So if the president is committed in fighting corruption, and Domelevo is also committed in fighting corruption, I think that the president should rather be happy that Domelevo is assisting him in fighting the corruption. He should have asked him to proceed on leave, and then whoever he put in place clear this issue. So this is the point that I am taking it from as the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. Because I need to know what were those documents at the time of the audit. Why are those documents now being made available?
Those points you just made were also articulated by the civil society group. Mr. Asante, you also say that the action by the president, quote, gravely weakens the president's fight against corruption. We just had the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee articulate the same point. And you also say context is important. It is important to note that this current issue with the Auditor General, I'm quoting, is not an isolated event, but part of an ongoing tussle between the Auditor General and the Audit Service Board, led by its chairman, Mr. Edodo Ajiman, over the confines of the Auditor General's constitutional independence. Kojo Ponkroma has said that these positions amounts to conjecture, and that when you make those pronouncements about it weakening the president's fight against corruption, it is an erroneous conclusion to come to, just as the PAC chairman had said. Well, what's your explanation for coming to this conclusion?
Well, yeah, before I deal with that, let me touch on the point that my good friend Kojo made about not mixing matters of constitutionality with public interest agenda. I mean, when we talk about Mr. Domelevo working. And for me, the point is that this is the business of governance. Yeah. There is so many things we have made reference to. We've made reference to the Public Services HR manual policy. We've made reference to the statute, the labor law. We've made reference to the Constitution. In that whole institutional arrangement, the president has so much discretion to handle this issue in a way that serves the public interest. How does it serve the public interest when we know that the public services manual does not prohibit accumulated leave? How does that serve the public interest when you ask an auditor general to go and sit at home for 167 days whilst the taxpayer is paying him? Nobody will do that with their private company. How is it good for the state? It cannot be prudent. And that's why when we make this, so it's not that we are just conflating constitutional issues with issues of issues that don't have substance. What we are saying is that there are a lot of factors that actually could help the president relook. I mean, after all, we talked about referenda the last time. The president could have made an interpretation and said that no, it should go ahead, but he reconsidered, following that, maybe people did not understand this issue, so he withdrew. Even though it was a legal matter that he has, proceeded on. So the president has a lot of room. We don't have to jump and run to the Supreme Court all the time. There are many ways in which you can cure a problem because the president is there to always serve the public interest and to defend the Constitution. So if matters are brought that can help avoid those kinds of issues, it is proper that the president reconsider. So I don't think there's any problem at all with pursuing these different agendas in the same way. Ultimately, as Kojo has said, it is to advance our democracy. So there's nothing stops the president really from looking at the situation again and saying, no, I've really thought about the thing and I want to go this way. And we can also deal with the substantive matter about the constitutional issues later on. Now, let me talk about
your conclusion about this being a weakening the president's anti-corruption fight. But there's a president who had instituted the Office of the Special Prosecutor, has led his side to pass the Right Information Act. He was simply enforcing what he thought to be a legal injunction to get an appointee to go to proceed on accumulated leave. How does that affect his fight against corruption?
Yes, and that is exactly the point I've just raised about that. If the base of your decision is faulty, even in terms of, as I said, in terms of serving the public interest, this is a person that with the president has stood on Mr. Domelevo's work to show a lot of the efforts that are being made in the anti-corruption sector. And he had talked about how he's resourced the Auditor General to do his work. Mr. Domelevo has also, reciprocated in showing how the president has supported his commitment, has shown his commitment to support his work. So it's like, if those two things are true, why would you allow your best player to go and sit at home while you pay the person when the person is not working? When you know that, as I said, the rules clearly show you that you don't need to bring the accumulated leave in. You can just ask him to take his 2020 leave. And that is palpable. Everybody has shown that. And I kept even, I made the case that even the Deputy Attorney General has affirmed this position. So why are we litigating that particular matter? And I think when that is done, then the president is undercutting his own efforts. And that is why we say the effect of the decision definitely weakens, the anti-corruption fight. Because as I said, even if you have 2 months of Domelevo, he will lead and drive your anti-corruption agenda. And that is good for the state. It's good for the citizens of Ghana. So that is the point we make about that.
I see. Stay with me. I want to take a quick break. I want to come back and hear from Kojo on this. And I'll hear from Mr. Osingame. So how do you resolve this? And that, within the public servants. The president has taken a decision. Civil society says, well, reinstate him. But something has to give. Is it only the Supreme Court that could resolve this matter amicably? And I'll also hear from the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. He's asked a lot of questions, raising the corruption angle, but they also have the power to, I guess, do something about this. Will they? We'll hear from him when we return from this short break. Stay with me. Thank you very much for staying with us here on PM Express. My guest still with me discussing this is Kojo Asante with the CDD. Kojo Nkrumah is Information Minister. We also have James Klucha-Veggie, who is the Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, and Mr. Osingame, who is a labor expert. Mr. Nkrumah, to that question that both Mr. Veggie and Kojo Asante had raised about what this means for the president's anti-corruption crusade and fight, I want to read to you a part of the statement that the civil society read today, which has been alluded to also by the chairman of the PAC. He says, I mean, the civil society guy says, it is important to note that this current issue with the Auditor General is not an isolated event, but part of an ongoing tussle between the Auditor General and the Audit Service Board, led by Chairman Mr. Edward Duajiman, over the confines of the Auditor General's constitutional independence. And then they also draw in the Kroll Associates issue, which they believe has, you cannot disregard that in the context of all that has happened. And of course, concludes by making the point about how this affects the president's fight against corruption. Definitely, these are factual, circumstantial issues that cannot be delayed. You agree with that position?
Evans, let me start by responding to a couple of comments that my good friend, the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, made, and then I'll dovetail into these specific ones. And he makes an assertion on national television that the senior minister has been cleared by the Deputy Auditor General in the Kroll matter. I want to humbly submit to you that that is not true.
But we've seen that we've seen a circular that has circulated, signed by the deputy, in which he says that they have looked at the documents and they found nothing wrong in those documents.
No, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. I encourage you to pick it up and to read it to your audiences. It doesn't say that. It says that they have examined the documents and are satisfied and are ready to report to the court. And let me explain to you the background and the mischief that has been played with some of these matters behind the scenes. Mr. Domelevo himself was the one who wrote to the office of the senior minister asking for an opportunity to examine the Kroll documents. Why? Because at the time of the original audit, when they requested to examine the documents, the office of the senior minister explained that the nature of the transaction which it was involved with required that they have an opportunity to come and inspect the documents. They never got around to completing that by the time they issued the audit report. And the office of the senior minister has consistently said that the documentation is available but should be inspected. Mr. Domelevo proceeded to surcharge the office of the senior minister, or the senior minister himself alongside other persons. The senior minister prayed the court to compel him to provide the basis, which he failed to do, and then was cited for contempt, subsequent to which they were asked by the court to go and inspect the documents. It is this inspection that had not taken place, this inspection which was requested under the signature of Mr. Domelevo. I've had opportunity to cite the letter that he wrote, which is what has now been taken, what has now taken place because he's not in the office. And the letter to the office of the senior minister essentially says that it has been inspected, and now they are able to go to the Supreme Court or to the court to give the court a view of it. So he has not been cleared. it is important that we don't begin to slip some of these things and create a certain impression that Mr. Domelevo himself has a problem with maybe the president or somebody specific. Because you will recall, Mr. Domelevo has been on record praising the government, praising the president for ensuring that in an unprecedented manner, the Office of the Auditor General is being resourced and supported to do its work. So it's important that we put some of these things.
Just to clarify on that, I'll just read that specific wording of this letter. Johnson Ekwamwa-Siedu, who is the acting Auditor General, signs and writes, and he says, inspection of document, and this is to Honorable Senior Minister. He says, reference to your letter dated 25th, states the date, and yours, reference to our letter and yours, and the inspection of the document in your office on this, and it mentions the date. 2, we wish to state that we are satisfied with the process and therefore propose that the lawyers inform the Supreme Court accordingly to enable the parties go back to the High Court to continue with the proceedings in court. So they are satisfied with the process. You say he was referring to a mere inspection of the document. The process, yeah, you say it was reference to the process of inspection of documents.
There is a 25th June 2020 letter under the signature of Mr. Daniel Yao Domelevo that says, pursuant to the directions of the Supreme Court dated 24th June 2020, in the consolidated suit titled J62-2020, I shall be grateful if you will make available to my office a copy of the report of work done by MS Kroll and Associates in respect of the payment of $1 million made to MS Kroll and Associates. 2, I will be available to meet your team of not more than 3 persons as a result of the protocols of COVID-19 on either Monday the 29th or Tuesday the 30th of June in my office at 9 a.m. to receive the said documents or report. 3, be assured of my absolute confidentiality in this matter. Yours sincerely, Daniel Yao Domelevo, Auditor General. These are the processes that I've gone through. So this spin that some very senior persons want to put on the carefully released one-sided letter of the acting Auditor General to create an impression. And I mean, let's be honest and very blatant with it. You would recall how you had senior NDC functionaries and spokespersons tweeting and sharing this letter on social media as though they had discovered a smoking gun. These things must be discouraged because it then fits into a certain narrative or helps to fund a certain narrative that may not be exactly the case, which is why I say to you this evening, I think on the radio, that let's not go into conjecture. Let us stay with the legal and the factual matters that are in dispute here. And for example, the legal and factual matters that are in dispute here are whether or not there's something like accumulated leave, whether or not it is unconstitutional for the executive branch of government to have this view of the law. And the very final point I'll make on this, it is interesting to hear my senior colleague in Parliament talk about helping the fight against corruption, and that if you want somebody to help you in the fight against corruption, you don't ask that person to take accumulated leave. And let's not be fooled by the fact that he says he's speaking as chairman of the committee. He's also speaking as an NDC member of Parliament who was very much around the last time the executive branch of government exercised this power in the same manner. He didn't raise an objection then.
Let me get some quick reaction to the point about the letter. Mr. Abeji, the letter, the information says that's not what it was.
Well, first, thank you very much. And first of all, I think let me tell my colleague, the Minister for Information, that probably as a journalist at the time I was calling for the appointment of the Auditor General to be made by Parliament. I've always been against the appointment of Auditor General by the President. So he cannot say that I was there because that has been my position all the time. That
no, sir, I'm referring to a specific matter.
No, the Auditor General is an officer of Parliament. So I have been referring to this issue over
but that's not what I'm talking about.
Yes, but because you
that's not what I'm talking about.
You said I was there because I was there when the appointment was made. I didn't raise any issue.
No, that's not what I'm talking about, sir. If you take your time to hear me out, I'm saying that this is not the first time that the executive branch of government has had a view on the labor law as it pertains to an appointee of the audit service. And I'm saying that with the greatest of respect, the objections that you raised today and the argument you make today that it doesn't augur well for the fight against corruption on this specific matter, you did not raise it the last time the executive arm of government exercised its power in this manner.
Well, probably because I'm not in the position. I wasn't in the position like I am today to raise that issue. So whether I've raised it, you will not even know. But the issue is this. The issue is this.
But Mr. Abeji, forgive me. On this matter, were you a member of parliament in 2009 when Professor Mills came to power?
Yeah, I was a member of parliament, but I wasn't the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee.
Yeah, but as a member of parliament, you still had, did you state your position on this, and what was it?
Well, I did not make any position on this at that time.
Okay.
But I'm saying that if at the time it was done, and it was done wrongly, do you repeat that wrong position which was carried in the past and use it as a basis of taking action that you think that action will inure to your benefits? The issue about the legality is something that I said earlier on that I will not talk about it.
Can you respond quickly for me to the document that Mr. Nkrumah has challenged? It says your use of it.
You have read the document to everybody. It says that the acting auditor general says that they are satisfied with the process. They are satisfied with the process. Now, Nkrumah is now defining that process, which is not contained in that letter. That the process of letters that had changed hands back and forth, that had led to the inspection, is that the process that the acting auditor general was referring to, and that is what Nkrumah has explained. But I was making my argument based on that letter which was issued by the current auditor general, that by satisfying with the process means that you are satisfied with the documentation. And my question I raised again was that at the time of the audit, where was no document? And Kojo Nkrumah has also raised it now, that at the time of the audit, those documents were not available.
I haven't said that. No. I haven't said that.
You said it.
No.
You said that the documents were not available.
I haven't said they were not available. No, I have said that the office of the senior minister has always insisted that they invited the auditors to come and inspect it. Are you there, sir?
At the time of the original audit?
Yes,
and the
they have maintained that.
And the office of the auditor general refused to go to
but
inspect
this is the whole crux of their debate. And I don't want us to get sidetracked into this matter. This is the whole back and forth between the senior minister's office and the audit service, reference to this particular matter, that the documents are available. They invite them to come and inspect. That inspection, they were not able to complete it before they put out the audit report. They objected to it. If you recall, at one of our minister's press briefings, they gave us a brief which we shared with the public that they object to it because they are of the view that if they had had the opportunity to engage them as they had suggested, they would have been in a position to explain to them and show them the documentation of the work done. Be that as it may, that could not be done. They completed the audit. And that is why they were looking forward to appearing before Parliament, because they are of the view, and Evans, this is very important, because they are of the view that the Auditor General is the officer of Parliament, and therefore they should be able to, even if they were not able to come and inspect the documents, if they present the report to Parliament, Parliament will invite them, and they can then have an opportunity to also share those documents with Parliament. You will recall that the Auditor General, the respected Auditor General, and let me be clear, he's a man very, very well respected. The respected Auditor General said that was not the process, and that when he was done with his audit report, he was at liberty, literally, to put it in the public domain. You recall this back and forth. Yes, so they have always maintained that the documents are there, but because of the nature of the work, the investigative work that was ongoing, they were rather asking them to come and inspect those documents. Okay. That's been their contention.
Let me quickly.
So my only objection is that it's not true that the documents.
Let me quickly hear so that we can wrap up on this.
let me come in before other colleagues. It's good that Honorable Minister of Information is putting out this information out there, that the letter of the Acting Auditor General is not clearing the senior minister of this Crow issue. So it's good information to us. So the public should know, take it from him, that it is not that they have cleared, that it's just a matter of satisfying with the process. So we agree to that. Okay. The other issue about the Auditor General putting the information in the public domain is that, look, if you read Article 1875, it says that the Auditor General, within 6 months, should submit a report to Parliament. And when you go to the Act, at 584 of 2000, Section 23, the reports, it says that after the Auditor General submitted a report to Parliament, he shall publish the report. Now, the mode of the publication has not been indicated in the law.
Yeah, he chooses to do it on his website. Those arguments I've seen play out. But I want to quickly come back to the substance of this, which is really what we're talking about: the Auditor General's leave, accumulated leave, and the debate around that. Let me come back to Mr. Austin Game as we wrap up. Mr. Game, clearly, this matter, government position is clear, that the decision has been taken. It's only the courts that can resolve this, and we await and we welcome anybody who wants to go to the Supreme Court. How is that what you say also, that this should be left to the court to decide? How do we resolve this, speaking as a labor expert, conclusively going forward?
Honestly, this will not be very, very helpful to the employer, being government, in this instance, at least for now. Clarity must be brought to bear on this. That is why when it comes to applying the Labour Act, it is the National Labour Commission that is the primary place to go, not necessarily the courts. Then when one is not satisfied of the ruling or of the award given by the National Labour Commission or a mediator, or as the case may be, then you proceed to court to seek other redress. That is what it is. This is a professional HR function, and I think that there are very notable people in the government, like Kojo and the rest of them, who should be able to advise on this issue. It's purely in an HR function. Running it into the legalistic domain will not be very helpful to anybody. Perhaps that is the reason why the CSOs are doing what they are doing. So I will urge that they should invite people if they like, they should sit around and have a conversation and let the man take his 2020 leave and return to work. Anybody who takes an accumulated leave of over 167 days, maybe he has no, we don't need him. We don't need him in any office because it's of no value to us. By the time he returns, he's virtually complete something else. So if you allow him to go and do his work, take the 2020 leave. But the accumulated leave is non-existing to start with. That's the point.
Mr. Kojo Asante, so you started this, conversation and with the campaign. So give me a sense of your ultimate objective here. Is it only that you hope that the president will rescind his decision? And clearly from what I've heard tonight from Mr. Ponkroma, it's not something that you're getting. And so what next if you're not getting that?
Oh, I still hope we'll get it. I am an optimist, and the campaign will continue because it's very important. And I think that the president, as I said, yes, we can talk about law and constitutions and so on, but daily governance, it's also, it's about reflecting. It's about acknowledging when there's an error. And when you have a mounting of evidence that clearly tells you that maybe this is not the best way to go, that thing stops the president from rescinding his decision, modifying his decision, revising his decision. He's done it several times, so I don't think that
if he doesn't,
this is some sort of, once I speak it, I cannot take it back kind of situation. So that's I think, as I said, that's our hope, and we'll continue to appeal on a daily basis to the president to look at that.
But if it doesn't,
as I said,
if it doesn't do it, if it doesn't bring back Domelevo,
I mean, that's as I said. There's a short-term agenda that we will continue to pursue, but we've also said that this understanding of the president's powers opens a Pandora box that we will need to eventually go and seek some interpretation on. But definitely, the president can still do a lot currently to rectify the situation. So that will be our position, and we hope that the president will reconsider.
And the hashtag is
bring back Domelevo and let institutions work.
Okay. Mr. Ponkruma, is there any chance that the president will reconsider?
The president believes in letting institutions work. That is why he's been very supportive of Mr. Domelevo's work, or the work of the Office of the Auditor General. For that reason, the Auditor General himself has been on record as applauding the kind of investments that have been made in the service so far. I think Kojo Asante is right. Whenever the president or the executive arm of government is of the view that it has acted in error, it is not shy from rescinding whatever position it may have taken or whatever acts it may have embarked upon. In this instance, I do not have any indication that there's a belief of acting in error, and that is where we'll part ways on this matter.
Okay. Mr. Kojo Asante, I wish you well. I've seen the hashtag on Twitter. Have you been? I'm sure you've been tweeting yourself quite vigorously since you launched this early today.
He's been getting into trend.
Kojo has been tweeting it, in the behind closed doors.
No, I have not been doing so. He's been trying to get into trend.
Okay. Well, I'm just being told by my producers that it's now fifth on the Twitter trends tonight. That may give Kojo sleepless night, but I'm hearing he's tweeting in the back there. I mean, that's not true, huh? Okay. Okay, Mr. Asante, thank you for joining me. Mr. Austin Game, I'm grateful also. I'm grateful to you also for joining me, the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. Ponkruma, thank you also. Enjoy the rest of your evening, gentlemen. My name is Evans Mensah. See you tomorrow.